Stand by, motherfuckers. We're en route.
What's the difference between a wet raccoon and Donald J. Trump's hair? A wet raccoon doesn't have $7 billion fucking dollars in the bank. Plus.
No, we're going to get into it today. How's everybody doing? We're going to talk about Afghanistan today. Today's a bit of an opinion piece. We're going to be fair to the Biden Politburo. And then we're going to call them out on some shit. I had to use my... Oh, can see better. Had to use my Zeiss lens wipe to clean off my glasses. Forgot to do my phone. 20 years, folks. 20 years in Afghanistan. 2,000 plus dead U.S. service members. 250,000 plus dead civilians by some estimates. $1 trillion direct dollars spoken. I already got a thumbs down. Fucking 9 people watching. I already got a thumbs down. I haven't said anything. I already got a thumbs down. You know, many times in life. Hey, sports fans, Greg Medford. We're going to talk a little bit about the world today. Stuff that affects us, stuff that has affected us, stuff that will continue to affect us. If you just want to talk about knives, just jump off. We're not going to talk about knives very much. I got a couple cool. I made a couple slots for some new knives today, but we're not going to talk about knives today. I'm working on my podcast here with my MKT Medford friends, and then we'll migrate over once we have our podcast channel up and running on Apple. $1 trillion direct dollars, maybe 3 trillion indirect dollars. Direct dollars means money that went there for that, and indirect dollars are costs here associated with what we had to do there. 2,000 plus American lives, over 250,000 civilians, probably more than that. And the Taliban is in charge of the whole country. I served in the Middle East briefly, in Iraq and not in Iraq, in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. And I feel like I have this kind of vested interest in the region settling down and becoming good partners with us as as America and as the various countries over there that can be not adversarial to us. Afghanistan is a little off my map, but I feel like having Pakistan and Afghanistan as allies, having them reasonably stable, isolates Iran. And, it's not, I don't think anyone would ever blame the Biden administration for Afghanistan. That's clearly Bush too. And I consider him basically a Democrat with an R in front of his name. A little R in parentheses. And that's all it meant. He was a globalist. He was he may have said he was a conservative and got our conservative, vacuumed up the conservative vote, but he spent like a Marxist. He talked like a globalist. And he's part of the same establishment, beltway routine that we're so familiar with. And we have in office again. We haven't heard from the president, in quotes. We haven't heard from, hey, I have to answer a quick question here. Hold on. One of the factory guys. Did you find it? Oh. Okay, well, I have the drawings, and I'll send them over to you once I'm done here, okay? But, all right. Thank you. It's an unscripted show. You can't blame somebody for, if you get into let's say you get into an altercation out in the world. A lot of times you just get into it and you had no say in it. You just got caught up in it and there's nothing you could do about it. Sometimes you end up in bad traffic and it's not your fault. You ended up in the middle of it. Sometimes you end up in conflict with crazy. There are crazy people out there that can get you in their crosshairs. How you conduct yourself defines who you are and what you're about. Every president, because the goings-on of America are bigger than the office, every president inherits an ongoing set of things that are happening at every level. So us being in Afghanistan, not Biden's fault. 20 years of failed policy, not Biden's fault. Not the Biden administration's fault, not at all. Easy problem to solve? Honestly, not really that easy to solve. And here's why. Because for the last 3 administrations, the generals are liars. The generals are liars. They're obfuscating yes men. We've had a couple guys who kind of wanted to win the war, and then we didn't know what to do. And this was a concern about going in. What do you do? What do you do with a nation of people who don't know what a nation is? That's not figurative, that's literal. Afghans don't actually know what a nation is. You get outside of Kabul, most of them don't know that they're actually, their little village is part of a greater country that has borders. They don't know that. I'm going to cover a couple things today, okay? I'm going to cover the tragedy that is getting ready to spool up over there and this tragedy that we stepped into. I'm going to cover a little bit what a responsible commander-in-chief would do. And this is pretty straightforward. You don't want to critique without offering a solution. And it's disingenuous to blame the Trump administration. Oh, it's the Trump administration. We couldn't do anything about it. That's a lie. That's not true. If that's the case, then why isn't the Keystone Pipeline in production? Because that was a Trump administration approved project. Drilling rights all across America and in offshore places. Those are all approved by the Trump administration. Why aren't those? They had no problem changing the rules on that. The southern border all along Mexico. The Biden administration can't say they inherited that problem. That border was working great. The border was pretty secure. We weren't having the international crisis we're having down there that's being swept under the rug by the leftist conspiratory, conspiring media. At what point do you stop becoming a conspiracy theorist when you see a conspiracy going on? When are you no longer a conspiracy nut job? When we can all see it, when it's real obvious, and when the establishment's part of it? Is that when it ends being a crazy conspiracy theory? How about when you have video and pictures of it? Does it quit being a conspiracy theory? Or does it just start being... I'm not a theorist about this. We're not theorists about this. It's really happening. So the southern border's in crisis, and the current administration inherited a very secure border. And they're trying to figure out how to mask us and lock us down and save us all. And in the meantime, they're letting people come in with COVID and go free into the country. Makes sense. We have a perfectly good policy working very well at the border. We have a wall going up. The only thing about it you don't like is that you said it wouldn't work and it's working, so you therefore have to get rid of it. Because if it's not there, you can argue and obfuscate and point to the red herrings of this argument or that position, and there'd be no proof to show that you were on the wrong side of history again. That's the Biden administration. I heard somebody else call it feckless, and I've been calling it feckless since it got in there. Lacking rudder, lacking direction, full of theory, uncoupled from reality, and in denial of results. Full of theory. We've got all these grand ideas. But the experience of professionals and people who are there every single day, and the observational experience, and the data, and the experience we've watched on TV for the last 40 years, tell us something completely different. But you go with your theory instead of the data, and then you ignore the results. This is the opposite of scientific experiment. It's an experiment, all right, but they're not even learning anything from it. And they're in denial about it, and they're not looking at the results. So you really have a crisis at our southern border. They're developing an energy crisis. They're building an energy crisis, folks. It hasn't hit yet because the world's still stumbling back into walking and then running. But if we were up and running with the Trump administration right now, the biggest challenge we'd be having if Biden was the energy czar would be the fact there'd be no energy for the growth of the world. It's maddening to me. We're whooping up an energy crisis like back in the 1970s. This is Jimmy Carter stuff. Jimmy Carter, the worst president in American modern history. And Biden is going to outdo him. He's going to be the best, that's for sure. So we've got Barack Hussein Obama having big parties in Martha's Vineyard while the whole state's wearing masks and all worried about gatherings. Everybody's hanging out without a mask on. There are more drugs brought into Martha's Vineyard than at any time in the past, according to law enforcement. They seized more drugs going into that town during that weekend than any time in their on record. That's interesting. We've got a crisis being whooped up on the southern border. We have an energy crisis looming. We have a financial and fiscal crisis that is being fully precipitated by these Marxists around the Biden administration. They're not even leftists. These dirty, rotten commies who've been bought and sold by China, been misinformed by their professors at Harvard, Yale, Dartmouth, Princeton, NYU, Columbia, Brown, UCLA, UC Berkeley. They've been misinformed. They think they're the best and brightest, and they're not. Folks, that's the mistake. They're not the best and brightest. We do not have the best and brightest going to all these universities. We really don't. We have the most potentially academic excelling, uncoupled from reality, nerdly, not getting laid, not balancing life, not plugged into the world, academic, intellectual bunch of all time. That is true. But do we have the best and brightest? No. The best and brightest do not cloister away in universities, nor do they go work for the government, just FYI. So we have a crisis on the border. We have a crisis of morality with the parent administration. And that would be Barack Hussein Obama and his crowd. A whole bunch of them that have come over here to prop up this addled old fellow who should not be in the White House. And I guess that's our core crisis. And then we have the border. We have energy. We have a crisis in inflation. These are all self-made. You know, John Kennedy said there was no problem that we could not solve because all of our problems are man-made. Therefore, there's a man-made solution to all of our problems. I'm paraphrasing. It was a great line, as so many of his were. Quotable. You know, he'd clearly be a Republican by today's standards. Not that that means much, quite frankly. And now we have an international crisis. So we have an international crisis. Gas prices are through the roof. Inflation is jumping up like crazy, which mostly hurts people on the lower half of the income spectrum. We've got a border crisis. We have an employment shortage, which is a crisis, sports fans. We have all of these crises, which are self-inflicted. The Biden administration is basically standing around with a knife and they're just stabbing themselves. And they're stabbing us. Say what you want about the Trump administration and say what you want about Donald Trump tweeting, although I liked his obnoxious and blunt tweets. They cut to the bone. Were they statesmanlike? I don't know. If statesmanlike is leading misinformation and incompetence, no, they were not statesmanlike. They were not statesmanlike. They were common sense. Now, many of you did not serve in the military. No problem with that. Many of you are wokety woke, which means you don't know much. You know a whole lot about nothing that is not really accurate. For those of us who've been plugged in and paying attention, you can usually sense when our enemies are rising. And the reason why is because they tell you. And we have people that are, we have friends and countrymen and relatives who are still in the communities, intelligence communities, military. and we sense what's coming on the horizon. What weakness begets is aggression. When you back down to the bully at school, he's gonna take your lunch tomorrow also. He might even take your girlfriend. And what we got, we're projecting weakness right now. What's going on in Afghanistan is it's an embarrassment, and it's a shame, and it's self-induced. And to say, well, that was what Donald Trump agreed to do, so we had to do it, is a dirty, rotten lie of disinformation and passing the buck and unaccountability. And honestly, it shows a fundamental lack of the office. You know, they've uncoiled so many other things that Donald Trump done. They could have uncoiled this get out of Afghanistan. But make no mistake about it, Donald Trump was very clear when he said, we're pulling out of Afghanistan, but we would always leave, if it's needed, we would leave a light footprint of special operations capable people here so that this country doesn't fall into the chaos that brought us here 20 years ago. He said that. It's very clear. There's no guessing involved. You know, one thing that Donald Trump did is he left himself wiggle room when he did deals. Now, I'm not saying he was the best at everything. He wouldn't say that either. But for this administration, and you know what? A president has a right to go on vacation. It's a really stressful job. And even when they're on vacation, they're still working. So maybe Uncle Joe is still working. I actually don't care. What's unforgivable, though, is to say nothing while this is happening. To say nothing to the parents of our fallen soldiers who look like it was all in vain, who feel like it was all in vain today. It says nothing to all of the people who died in 9/11, which precipitated us getting into this war. It says nothing to the families of firemen who ran into the towers. It says nothing to everyone since who supported our country, who's paid our taxes, and has sent our friends, our fathers, our mothers, our daughters, our sons, our countrymen off to war to deal with PTSD, loss of life and limb, not to mention multiple trillions of dollars. And to have it all squandered in a couple days, it's unconscionable. And then to blame it on the last president? Hey, little news for you folks, especially for you, some of you ding-dongs, you leftists, you Marxists, and you ladies who are actually running the White House. The most powerful office on planet Earth can actually change how things were done by the last commander-in-chief and adjust as the needs of the day dictate. Just in case you didn't know. In case you didn't know, we didn't need to run out and let the country collapse and give it over to the enemy. We didn't actually need to do that. You could say, hey, you know, the last president was making the best decision he could at the time. This is what you do when you put up a unified front and you lead a nation. You say, listen, President Trump was trying to do something I think everyone agrees with, which is get out of Afghanistan. And the American public seems to have that sentiment. And as President Biden, I will tell you, I want us to get out of Afghanistan as well, folks. Things have changed a little bit from when President Trump was in office. This happens in every administration. There's not a clean handoff because things change rapidly. So we're adjusting our pullout policy from Afghanistan because we don't want it to fall into chaos. That's all the president has to do. And then everyone goes, oh, okay. Well, let us know what you want to do, boss. Sounds good. We got to back the president up. It's not his problem, but he's dealing with it well. Good for you. Yep, you know, we need to keep some troops there because the whole place is going to fall and it'll all be for nothing. And next thing you know, we'll be playing whack-a-mole all over across many continents, across the entire planet. We'll be playing whack-a-mole with all these people trained here in Afghanistan to come blow up more buildings in the United States. Because we're their enemy and they hate us. We're not their enemy, but it's easy for them to say that. Taliban is to we hate America as Democrats are into the United States is racist. It's just a way to divide and conquer. So they're saying over there, because it's an easy thing to rally everybody, you can just yell it up in the air. Death to America, the great Satan. Allah Akbar. You can just do that. No thinking required, and you can get the masses on your side. Over here, you just yell racism. Racism. Nobody wants to be a racist. Half the people don't want to say anything for fear of being accused of racist. And whoever's left, you just yell louder that they're racist. You don't even actually have to do anything or be successful. All the president and his Politburo in the White House had to do was say, hey, we know that the president from the last administration agreed to some terms, and in principle we agree in pulling out of the nation. We want to do it in an orderly fashion. The intelligence from our generals is currently saying that we've got a problem, and if we just bail out, the whole country's going to implode. We're going to do some withdrawal, some scaled withdrawal from different regions, and we'll see how those regions stabilize before we pull out of the main capital. We don't want to lose our embassy. We don't want to lose our ability to smoothly project power into the region. Cut off terrorism at its, nip off terrorism in the bud as it starts to rise up, if it does rise up. And we want to be able to show the Afghan national defense forces how to protect themselves as we begin to leave, and see them do it regionally before we pull out of the country. And we're going to abide by the withdrawal of the last administration, because we want, the reason you do that is so people have faith in what you say as president. This is the thing, Joe Biden, and all of you lackeys who like him. If you undo everything the previous president did, it makes everything you do undoable, and it makes your word subject to the election cycle, which makes our allies not trust you or believe you. Even if they do, the next guy is going to come in and change everything, so you can't rely on anything. This is why you kind of follow through on what last presidents said they're going to do, especially our commitments. Now, if the last president says we really want to be liked by Angela Merkel and the various leaders of Europe, and the next president comes in and says, well, we don't really care if Europe likes us, we're going to do an America First policy. That's not undoing it's just that's a change of position. That's not a change of policy. Policy is we're going to follow through on what we've done here in Afghanistan so that it's all not a waste, and we're going to withdraw in a way very quickly. We're going to be drawing and withdrawing in a way that we can kind of test sample our withdrawal to make sure nobody slips into a power vacuum and the country doesn't fall back in the hands of terrorists and Islamic extremists. It's super simple. Now, here's what we don't know. Is the Biden administration just stupid? Are they just morons? Did the generals tell them, sir, we've spent $1 trillion and we have this force, but it's really a paper force that doesn't exist without us there giving it a backbone? Did they say that? And did this administration make that choice? Because if the generals did say that, then the administration says, here's what you do. You're at Camp David and it starts to fall apart. You poke your head out and say, you know what? I was against Bush 1 bringing us in there. I was against how the administration I was part of during the Obama presidency handled this and continued it. I was against how Donald Trump was going to withdraw us, and I'm done. We're out. And it's going to fall where it's going to fall. If 1 trillion years and 2,000 American dead and 250,000 dead civilians can't build a country that can be an ally, then you know what? Time to cut our losses and deal with the problems another way. Just be a man and okay, like, I don't agree with that, but if he said that, I'd be like, okay, well, I mean, if he just came out and just a man and just said, this is what we're going to do, I'd be like, okay, well, I think that's not the best way to do it, but what we're doing is clearly not working great, so, okay, well, I'll give it a try. Let's see if anything changes. Problem is, these crises are not formulaic. So the kids that Biden has himself surrounded with, these leftists, these Marxists, they're not good at their argument. which is why they've got to circle back. They don't know their facts, which is why they talk in circles all the time. And when you have a fluid situation like this, it's hard to prep the commander-in-chief for 3 weeks to get him ready to do a State of the Union speech or to address a change in policy. This is fast-moving and dynamic. And the press is not even holding them to account. If the press was doing their job right now, they'd be holding the president to account. The press are liars. And they're everything they do is contrary to who they are. If you really care about human rights and you really care about equality for women and you really care about children, the last thing you want to do is pull out of Afghanistan so that man-boy love night on Thursday nights and Tuesday nights doesn't exist over there where they go into rooms and they have the little boys dressed up like girls and they rape them, which goes on all over Afghanistan. If you really care, we shouldn't have just pulled out of there with our tail between our legs. We should have done it the right way. He'll be over there damaging women's genitals, telling them they can't go to school, covering them up, stoning them, sticking them, beating them, raping them. And they'll be doing the same to little boys dressed up like little girls. That's what's going on in Afghanistan this week, folks. That's what a lack of leadership and accountability looks like. So here's what I think happened. I think they kind of made a baller choice. Hey, we're just going to pull out. Enough already. 20 years. They made the same calculation I just made. But they were lied to by the generals. We've done our job, sir. I'm sure that's what they were told. The Afghan National Security Forces are great, sir. They sit there with their big fat necks and their wagging jaws and their chests full of medals and their dumb uniforms and their dumb stars on their shoulders, and they lie. They're stupid and they lie. The only thing worse than lying is being stupid and lying. A bunch of yes men. That's mostly who's running our military. Lying, stupid yes men. So there's some culpability to go around here, folks. And we have to hold to account. We have to find out. You may not like it. We have to get to the bottom of the 2020 election, because when people are polled, almost half the country believes the election was unfairly conducted and illegally and fraudulently conducted. Whether it was or not, you have to get the faith of the people. If that many people believe that. And if the generals lied to the president or misinformed the president, then they need to be strung out and held account. And I mean generals all the way back, which is going to be the entire upper echelon of the Army and current U.S. military. The whole damn bunch of them have been lying. They've been in the war 20 years, which means almost every serving officer has cut his entire field grade and above ranking during this war and has been a part of it at some level. And they've misinformed at every turn. They've been wrong at every turn. So here we are today, folks. I knew something was amiss last week when Joe Biden said he was talking about the evacuation of Saigon. Said, we will not have another Saigon. We will not have it. Because he wasn't quite in office then, but just about. He might have been actually in office in 75. The evacuation of Saigon was an embarrassment. We basically pulled out of Vietnam with our tail between our legs. We were pulling people off the roof of the U.S. Embassy. We were loading up aircraft carriers with so many people, they were pushing helicopters off the side of the deck to make room for people. And we just pulled out of a country with emergency troops sent to safely get U.S. personnel out, with a shelter-in-place order for all Americans, after $1 trillion, 20 years, 2,200 service members, and 250,000 dead people. That's what we just did. It's a man-made crisis. If you hear someone blaming the Trump administration for this, it's disingenuous lying. This would have never happened under the Trump administration. I think we all know that. People are going to say, oh yeah, Trump got deferments from Vietnam. Personally, as a Marine infantry guy, anybody who didn't want to go kill people, glad to have you not there. If you got a legal way of deferring, good on you. Get out of here. Beat it. Yes, no, next. Not interested. If you don't like his tweets, I get it. I don't agree, but I get it. If you don't like his brash way, I agree, but I don't get it. I mean, I get it, but I don't agree. I like his brash ways. And if you want to blame him for this, it's disingenuous, it's ignorant, it shows a complete lack of understanding of the office and the power of the presidency. You can't undo everything an administration has done and then claim that your folly in the Middle East is a result of what your previous administration said they were going to do. You just can't do that. It's Monday, folks. I've got knives to make, people to talk to, folks to interview, jobs to fill, people to hire. And I spent the weekend hanging out at the house. I listened to the radio a little bit. I listened to the news. I read a bunch. And I see what's going on. And it makes me sad. It makes me sad because, and I know for those of you who didn't like Donald Trump, I was not embarrassed by the success of America last year. We were doing really well. And nobody else was embarrassed because they were all wanting to do business with us and they wanted our money. Because money makes the world go round, almost literally. And I know right now, gas doesn't affect me that much, but gas is really expensive, which affects a lot of people. Homes have gotten ridiculously expensive. Our savings are worth less because they're printing money with nothing to back it up and no plan. It feels like Marxists are spending us into insolvency so that when everything collapses, they can point and say, look, capitalism doesn't work. It'll be the same people who spent us into oblivion. We have to hold everyone to account. We have to hold the election to account. We have to hold the failed policy in Afghanistan to account. If there's a Freedom of Information Act, if there's an investigation that can be done to find out who lied to whom, we need to know. We need to know if the president just failed, if the president's that stupid, which I believe he is. We need to know if he actually did fail. Or did his clack of Marxists go against the generals and make a dumb decision? Or did they go with the generals, and the generals are that dumb? We need to know, because they're all still serving. And we have to quit playing cowboys and Indians and figure out who our next big adversary is and get ready for it. China. Who decided it was a good idea to leave billions and billions of dollars of Humvees and MRAPs and weapons behind in the hands of a paper military we've spent $1 trillion trying to build? And it all now lies in the hands of an Islamic extremist nation state enemy of America. Who decided that was a good idea? There ought to be some goddamn heads rolling for it. Folks, those M4s they left behind, that artillery they've left behind, the machines they've left behind, the munitions they've left behind, it'll be killing Westerners, Americans, and our allies and adversaries alike for the next 100 years. They hung out and gave us a hard time with Moisen Nagants from World War I. I don't know, maybe those are from World War II. I think those are from the Bolshevik era. Who's going to be able to account? Do you know why we have the dumbest government on planet Earth? Because there's so much money and no accountability. None. Our government is a drunken, drug addict prostitute. That's what our government is. Well, thanks for stopping in and ranting with me. Oh, you know what? Let me spend a minute to welcome a few of you to the chat. Let me spend just a moment here. No, that's not what I wanted. Back to YouTube. All right, let's take a look. Oh, let me see. PDM Semper Fi, 22nd now. This crazy old man has screwed up America. Yeah, that's true. PDM Semper Fi. All right. Let's see. TP. Afghanistan government failed its people, took U.S. money and ran off. Yep. U.S. is losing a lot of trust around. Yeah, that's true. The Taliban were furious that the U.S. didn't pull out by April as the Trump administration agreed. Thanks, Biden. Okay, 20 years to right the ship. If we started now, this is generational change we're seeing. Yeah, that's true. View deleted message. Let me view this deleted message of Casper. The AI robot revolution is here. Oh, okay. Bunch of bullshit. Sleep fuckers. Yeah. Impeach Biden, Harris, Trump, DeSantis, 2024. It's like it was planned or something. Yeah, no kidding. Gary Munn. Yeah, saw a Taliban member on the news holding an M4 with an ACOG. Unbelievable. Yeah, I know. Yeah, you know, we've got, for those of you who are Marines out there, we've got a thing you hear in the military, in the Marine Corps in particular, my background, and it was leadership by example. Leadership by example. You can't request of your men and expect them to do that which you are not willing to do yourself. You eat last, not first. And the whole gung-ho, which we got after, it's actually a Chinese phrase, all hands, everyone, work together with spirit of togetherness. That gung-ho spirit of the Marine Corps is about officers chipping in and working with everyone else, getting rid of that Napoleonic officer stands on the hill with his arms crossed watching the men work. Leadership by example is required here, folks. Get your own house in order before you lecture us on the upside of democracy. You want to tell us how our country should be? Why don't you unfuck your own country first? That's what everybody's saying about us right now. This is another reason Democrats should, instead of brushing the election of 2020 under the rug, should be looking for accountability. We get honesty through accountability. We get action through accountability. We get credibility through accountability. And we get from all of those things success. Success starts with accountability. We can't blame the last administration. We can't blame the people. We can't blame anyone. But those who are in power, who've gotten there, who lack accountability and don't take accountability, the buck stops there. And if you're a politician of any ilk and you're not for clarity and disclosing what happened in 2020 so that you can repatriate half your country who thinks it's a grand lie, and there's just evidence at every turn that something nefarious happened. If you're not willing to investigate, to uncover the truth, then you're part. Half the people think you are part. You're in on it. And how can we go to our allies and say what should happen if we can't even keep our own house in order? I'm disgusted, folks. I'm disgusted. I'm going to do the only thing I can do, which is go out, do my craft, do my trade that I do all day, and do the very best that I can. I'll come back on here. I'm going to speak my truth again tomorrow. I hope you guys join me. It's great fun talking to you, seeing you here. And this is like a little bit of therapy for me, and I appreciate you guys being there. It's a little therapy to just say it like I see it. And I don't need to worry about someone spitting in my food because I said it. I didn't need to worry about somebody, giving me that look. I don't need to worry about people talking under their breath about me. They don't like the bumper sticker on the back window of my truck. They don't like that I'm not wearing a mask. It's just us here. It's just us Americans chatting. And so many of you reach out to me privately. You text me or you email me. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your thoughts. You guys can always reach me at greg@medfordknife.com. I get a lot of you text me. My number's out there at 480-227-2399. So I appreciate you reach out and texting me. I know a lot of people say, they thank me for maybe giving voice to what they're feeling inside, but maybe they don't want to battle it with their wife or their boss or their coworker, so they just kind of keep it to themselves. Speaking the truth and pointing out the absurdity of life can be lonely because you alienate people around you who like their head in the sand. But eventually, you make friends with like-minded people or supportive people, and you get enough steam in your step because you end up liking yourself so much and being so comfortable in your own skin, being authentic. And I think people even forgive me because they know that I'm not faking this. When you're authentic to yourself, you walk an inch taller, you smile a little wider, you laugh a little harder, and you hurt a little deeper. And it's not for everybody. Thanks for stopping by.